Hi everyone, so this is just a quick reminder of what we were covering and what I was expecting for the class exercise or homework assignment that we're working on. So this is the Blockman rig, and really you could take this and work with it a few different ways. This is already created. This is Ryu's file, and I unbound the skinning that he did, because all I really need from you all to do is to parent the joints together with the geometry, or the geometry to the joints, so like a child-parent relationship. So real quick, I can do show, and I can go down to polygons. That'll hide the polygons. This will show your skeleton. And for the skeleton, the thing that we're going to do is orient the joints is one of them. This is looking alright with the Z's and the Y's, but we wanted the X to come to the side, to the left side. So I can take all the things on the spine, and again, if you don't see these, I selected the root joint in object mode, tap the up arrow, come up to the very top here. I'm going to show and hide these selection masks. Okay. When I hit F8 on my keyboard, it's going to put it into component mode, and you'll see this stuff here. Okay. For component mode, I generally use or need to click on this, which is show miscellaneous components. Okay. And that'll allow me to see these. They were already there for some reason, and that's okay. But I can select them one by one. So I'll select that one. These are all facing the same way, so when I rotate them, they're going to be perfect. So I'll shift select these others. You could even get to the center of them by clicking and dragging the marquee around them like that. I'll hit E to get to my rotate tool. If you hold J, it's going to enable the snapping functionality, so I can do this. Okay, and just dragging by this handle right here. You have the different axes handles. I'm really focusing on those. I also like to pop in and out of my different views so that I can look at my side view, my front view, and so on and so forth. Okay, I can see this one right here is a little messed up, so I'll just fix that. It's pretty close. The rest of them look pretty good. And then I need Y to go up. So X, I'm having go, basically anything going vertical is going to have X going to the left hand side, and Y is going to point to the child. So remember, there's the joint is right here. Its child is the one that this little wedge is pointing to. So basically the skeleton, whatever it looks as though it's pointing to as it gets smaller to or towards, that's the child. So parent, child. And what I could do is select these. So I'll just go like this, and holding down shift, dragging a marquee around each one of these, because again, they're all facing the same direction except for that one. Okay, so I'll fix that one separately. I'll hit E to get my rotation tool, hold down J, click on this axis handle, which was the X axis, and that looks pretty good. I go and check these. Now, I'm not going for super perfection this time around, but you want to be very careful when you're doing this to a character that's going to go to production. This one is kind of like a learning exercise in a sense, so you still want to get the best that you can, but in this example, I'm not really going to be able to spend too much time on it. Okay, so X points outward to the left, Z is pointing forward. We're not really worried about Z, we're just X and Y. First is going to be X, because that's the way that the joint is going to rotate on. So how I was saying in class, it's going to act like a hinge on a door. So you figure out which one's going to rotate first. For us, it's going to be X, because the guy's going to rotate forward or backwards. And then Y points to the child. Again, this is just a rule of thumb. You could do this your own different way if you wanted to. This way works pretty well though. Okay, it's pretty good for production. If this was going to have another functionality, then I can have these things rotated a different way. But I'm going to keep it kind of quick. So basically I have this, and what I can do is these joints right here aren't super necessary, but since they're there, I'll just kind of work with them. The X is going to point outward like this, and it's easier to do from the front view in some cases. So I'll hit spacebar to pop to that view. I'll hit F, the F key to frame it. And that actually looks pretty good right there. So that, and then Y, I would generally point to the child, but in this case, I could point it up because really this is going to do nothing, this joint right here. And that's okay. We could always have a joint like that for a placeholder and so on and so forth. So that's pretty close. This one here, X is going to point out. Let's see the other ones. They look like they're the same, so I'll just select all of them. And remember, your handle could get in the way and you don't want to rotate anything or scale it. So instead of being in one of these tools, which is the scale, rotate, and translate, click on this tool up here, which is Q on your keyboard. That's the hotkey. Okay, that's your selection tool. So I'll hold down Shift and select these. Selection only allows you to select. That is the selection tool. That is. You can't rotate or scale, so you really have a hard time messing anything up. So for this case, I'm going to get the X's to point out. These two front ones aren't going to work very well, so I'll just minus those out. I can hold down Shift or Control to get rid of that selection. These three are perfect though. They're all the same. So I'll hit E on my keyboard. That's my rotate tool. Come over here, hold down J for snapping functionalities, right? Get that X to point out. And Y to point to the child. So hold down J, click this axis handle. I'll pay attention to these ones. Actually, that one did it well. Yeah, it did really well. Right there. And rotations are undoable, so I hit Control Z there now that I just kind of messed that one up. And if this thing's getting in your way, you can make it larger or smaller by hitting the plus or minus key. Okay, so I can make it a minus key till I can get to something else over here. A plus key if I need to have a little bit more finite angle. Okay, and that'll work for now. I'll get these two right here. So I'll hit Q on my keyboard, my selection tool. Select this one, Shift select this one, hit E, and I'll point the X out. So this axis handle, hold down J for snapping functionality. That looks pretty close. And again, I'm not going for perfect. You can do a better job than me. This is just an example for you all. So hold down J and I'll bring this forward like so. And that one's good. This one in the front, I could fix it to be a little bit better. So I'll pop out of this view, pop into the side view because that makes sense. It's perfectly on the side at that angle. And I can just, I'm not holding J this time. I'm just straightening this thing out. Keep going too far. And if you make this large, like the way that I'm doing, I can see these handles. When I get it like right on the money, it's going to be great because you can see that they'll be straight. So that's pretty straight right there, and this one's pretty straight right here. There's no dithering in the lines. That kind of indicates that you have a pretty nice angle there. Okay, hit the minus key to make that smaller again, my tool that is. Okay, and that looks pretty good. So I'll come over to the arm, and the arm's kind of the same deal. The Y can point up in this case, or I'm sorry, to the child. And the X, well, we're worried about the X pointing out more so than the Y. This is one of the ones that can have a little variance in there. But for our sake, I could pop out of this view, if it'll let me, and pop into the front view. Hit F to frame it. Okay, and I could always do something like this and average it out. Averaging is okay for certain joints. This case, it's not really something that's going to control much, so I'm not too worried about that. So we could just have the X point outward. So vertical joints and horizontal joints are a little bit different. So for vertical joints, we instead of X pointing out, we're going to have, oh, sorry, vertical joints have X pointing out, and horizontal joints will have a different setup. So as I look at this, I could actually see that the X's are pointing down to the children. So I'm going to do the same thing here to kind of select those. And the hand down here can average out, so that one could be a little bit tricky. I'll do a little bit of the same with it though. So select those, just pop out of here, pop into my front view. And we could discuss this a little bit more in class because it can be a little bit tricky. And we are moving a little more quick than normal. Yeah, so that hand is off a little bit. So I'm just going to deselect it, hold down Control. And see, I can't do that because my tool is in the way. I could either hit Q to get to my selection tool, hold down Control, and deselect that. And then hit E again to select my joints, or get my selection of rotations that I have going on here. And I can rotate them, so X is going to go out. I didn't hold J that time, so I could undo it, and I can hold J and try it again. And that's pretty close there. And I want Y to point to the child. This one's doing it right there. I can see it in my screen. And that one's pointing to the child. Oop, look at that X. No good. I was zoomed out a little too far, and that looked weird, so I'll just go like this. Okay. You notice I had to drag out this way. You'll get used to the way that it kind of interpolates your rolling when you are rotating this. This one I could pop into a side view and average this thing out. And what I mean by averaging is that I can rotate this to have the Z pointing forward and such. Okay. And I really go based off of the hand. If the hand was tilted, I'd have to change this, and it's another scenario we can talk about. But the X can come outward, or you know, the X or the Y generally. But I'm gonna point the X up, and I'm just gonna go from this view because I can use my tool now to basically get that going pretty well for me. This one averages out between all the joints right here, so kind of like a straight line. If you were to put your hand forward and you tilt it like kind of, you know, so, where you just kind of twist your hand, you know, it would give you that functionality. So I'll show you when I can test it. So I'll just point this way, and I'll look in here. The Y isn't pointing down to the child, so I can do that now. I can just do this, rotate it this way. And the Y is the one I'll have to average out this way. Now we could always do this another way, but since my X's are pointing out, that's the way that we're going to go. Okay. This is a different pose. If we were in a different pose, Y would generally go up and X would probably point to the child. When it is the, you know, the horizontal layout. So if this was T-posed, that's the way it would go. So really we could anticipate that, and I can get these all to work their way that I want them to work this way, just like following the rule of thumb and being deciding later that I can, you know, select these and say, well, generally I'd probably have Y outward, just rule of thumb wise again. And I keep saying rule of thumb because it is really just a rule of thumb. You can have another method that works totally fine, and as long as your character is working the way you need it to work, then that is usually a success. Okay. But this is really something that's kind of been taught throughout the years, and they figured out it works. So it is basically an industry way of going about it. That looks pretty good there. So in this case, X is pointing to the child and Y is pointing up. So if I put this character in T-pose, Y is up and X is going to be pointing to the left, just like the spine is right here. So you can see the spine ones. Okay. But this character is not in T-pose, and that's okay. Not a big deal. So the same thing would happen with the fingers. The Y in this case could point outward. Okay. And the X would point to the children. So this is fine the way it is at the moment. So we're going to call this a win for now, and we'll be discussing some things. Oh, that's not good right there. Look at that. And you got to be careful with these. I could pop to my side view. Oops. My side view to fix it. But yeah, so that's getting close. But you got to be careful because you can actually have stuff in here, and if you hold down like your middle mouse button, if you accidentally hit it, see how it's rotating? That could be bad. That could be bad juju. So I will fix that, and that looks pretty good. Another thing that I don't know if y'all remember in class, but I said that you can go up to display, because when you open this, it might look a little bit different. But if you go to display, you'll see what I mean in a second by going down to animation, display animation joint size. Okay. When I brought this in, it reset it to 100%, which is 1. When I hit enter, it looks like this. So if you have smaller fingers, that's going to be kind of a pain. Okay. What we can do is type in like 0.1 or 0.25. In this case, 0.25 is just fine for this character. And I'll close this, and you'll see that the joints now display smaller. It does nothing else but display it for us smaller, so we can see what's going on in our scene a little bit more easily. Okay? That Z is pointing backwards, and that's okay. The foot, I didn't fix the bottom. So, yeah, it's okay right there. And then the Z's on these ones. Actually, Y is pointing to the child. That's fine. It's totally fine right there. So what I would do is go back to object mode. I can hit F8 again. If you ever forget, these icons appear. So object mode, component mode, object mode. Okay. You could always right click too on some of these, and there's things that'll come up. In this case, it really doesn't tell us, you know, what's gonna work for us to go between object mode and component mode. If I click off to the side, I get some of that. So in some cases, you'll get different menu sets. If you hold shift and right click, you also get a different menu set. Okay, so those are things to remember because you're gonna have to get used to those. They are actually pretty quick to work with, and they're very helpful. Okay, so hitting the Windows key there. So what I'll do is I'll take this joint, and the whole chain down there, I don't need it because remember I can work on one side and duplicate over to the other side. So I'll delete that one, and then I'll do the same thing up here. Hit delete, just the delete key, it's fine. I could take this one, and I'll go up here to the top, go to skeleton, down to mirror joints, option box. And that's the option box on the right, okay? I'll click that with my left mouse button. I'm gonna do it in YZ. These aren't named, the joints aren't named, so I'm not gonna use the search feature and replace with. But when you name them, you can, search for left, replace with right. YZ, the Y splits it down the middle, the Z looks at it from the front, and it's going to copy from one side to the other. Okay? If that's not working for you, that means that you probably designed it in a different way, or you brought this in from another program, and that's okay. You can rotate it. I would generally rotate it to the front of the Maya scene, and a good way of telling that is that if you look at this little icon right here, it's like a compass. The Z pointing forward, that's the front of your scene. And then this little X pointing this way, that's the left of your scene. Okay? Or stage right, if you will. And then the Y going up is the up axis for your scene. Okay? In Maya, that's the way it is. In 3ds Max, it's a little bit different unless you change the settings. Okay? So this will work for me, and I'll hit mirror. There we go. That worked pretty nicely. I'll select the little joint here on the leg. And I could hit G. The G key on my keyboard will evoke the same command that I just did. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go up to skeleton, down to mirror again, just so it gets stuck in your brain. So mirror joints. I don't need to go to the option box, because if I do, really my same options are still there. Okay? So I'll hit mirror, and that's pretty good. And I'm just going to save this, Control S. That way we don't get my chance to crash on us and have to start over with that whole rotation process. Okay? If I were to check this skeleton, I can select the arms, for instance, for the movement. And if I come up here to rotate, and I'm going to rotate X, I can select it here, hold down my middle mouse button in here. Oops. See that? And they both go in the same direction. If I do Y, they go in the same direction. So now I can animate with ease, and I don't have to do like a minus on one side and a plus on another side. So that works pretty good. So if I did this, right? And clap because we did a good job. Yeah. All right. So that works for me in this pose, and I'm okay with that. Okay. The next thing is you don't have to bind it the way the skinning was on the lecture that we had. That was just kind of moving forward. So instead of going to skin and binding, that's a smooth bind. We'll do that for a different character later. Like if we were doing Spider-Man or something like that, then we need that to have a smooth bind. But this is just a really blocky character. So what I'll do is I'll just go to show. I'm going to go down to polygons and bring that back. Okay. I could also do this. I go to show and I can go down to joints to hide the joints. Select all my geometry. And remember, if I hit the 3 key, it's going to put it into a smooth mode. So it smooths out the geometry, or at least gives us the look of a smooth geometry. Okay. So now I'll go up to show, go down to joints, and I'll hit Q on my keyboard for my selection tool, my just regular selection tool. Okay. I can select my geometry, shift select the joint, and I could either hit the P key or go up to edit down to parent right there. Okay. That way, each time I have one of these pieces of geometry, they're going to follow something joint wise. So now this one is just parented to it, and for this it works fine, right? So if I were to say this works fine, the dummy agrees. Yeah. All right. So I'll hit Q on my keyboard, and then I would just select the child, shift select the parent. The child's always going to be the geometry in this case. Shift select the joint and hit the P key, or edit down to parent. Now, if I did it the other way around, I can mess things up. So if I selected this first, which that's supposed to be the parent, each joint can only have one parent. Okay. Each joint can have multiple children, but they can only have one parent. So this joint is following the previous joint, this one down here. Okay. So if I select this joint accidentally, then I shift select the geometry and I hit the P key, or I go to edit down to parent, my connection breaks. Okay. It broke between these two because I said don't follow this parent, follow the other parent, which is this one. So if this was a child, it can't follow mom and dad. It could follow either mom or dad using this method. Okay. So if I selected this joint and I move this, it's going to take everything with it. So that's a mistake. I can hit Control Z until I get that back. Okay. And I'll say, all right, well, I'll select the child first, which is supposed to be the geometry. Shift select the parent, which is the joint. And this time I'll hit the P key. Okay. And that's all you really do. I mean, this one is going to go with this, the way that it's set up. It's easy to tell. This with this. Okay. And I'm hitting the P key each time. Child, parent, P. Child, parent, P. And so on and so forth. Child, parent, P. And as you're doing this, you can feel free to do a little bit of movements to test things. All right. I'm going to try to see if I can hide that miscellaneous components. It's actually still showing. I'm not sure why. But, yeah, odd. Still showing these things. That's okay. We don't have to worry about that at render time. It's just obnoxious for our eyes at the moment. So instead of trying a few things, I want to keep this as short as I can. So I will just kind of go on with this for just a few more clicks. I'll do one leg. I'm not going to do all the fingers. I think you get the idea. But I do want to test it enough so you can see some of the results. Okay. The leg's super easy. So I could do both of them. And I can select the bone. See right here? When I click on this bone, it's really selecting that joint. Again, the bone is only there for our visual representations so that we know what we're doing and we can see the linkage. Okay. The computer doesn't care. It knows the connections. We just need to be able to see them. All right. So if I select my leg joints and I go to my rotate tool or go to rotate Y, you can see that this little dude can kind of shimmy. Right. X does a nice little kick, and so on and so forth. Okay. If you want to test this a little more easily, without having to click perfectly on the bones, you can come up here. These are our masking options. So if I come up here to this one, that little icon means surfaces, which is generic for objects, okay? So surface objects can be polygons, and they can be surface, like NURBS and such. So if I click that, it just means I cannot select NURBS or polygons in my scene. So check this out. I can drag a marquee now over these, and it looks as though the geometry is selected, but it's not, because the geometry is parented to the joints. So it's just showing the relationship. But when I go in here, rotate X, it's only rotating the joints, okay? And I could pick walk. I can tap the up arrow, hold down my middle mouse button, click and drag, and you can see that I am testing this, okay? I'll undo both moves. If I hold down shift and I select these, the other ones remain selected, and that's how we got that movement of both. See that? Ouch, it's a broken leg. Unless it's a robot, then that's comfy. So, pretty good. I could turn this back on, and that's going to allow me to select geometry again. And you want to be careful, because one of the things that people want to do is drag a marquee like this to select the joints, or the bones, which select the joints, okay? And what happens is that it selected the geometry too. So if I do this, actually it's working fine. Let me try that again. Yep, that's fine. It's actually paying attention to it, even though I am selecting both. The relationship is following, so that's pretty good. Sometimes we can end up with double transformations, and in this case we're fine. So you can actually leave that on and do your tests everywhere. See that? So if I did this, like that, look at that. And I have the hips selected, so it's going to rotate the hips, okay? If I did this, then, right? And that's pretty cool to see from the side. It's awesome. It's really cool to see these things come to life, even a character as simple as this. So that's really all you need to do. I would name all this stuff, okay? So don't forget that you can name things by selecting multiple things in here. And then if you come up here to this little section, click that little icon right there. We have this menu set. It doesn't look like a menu set, but if you hold down your left mouse button, that's the one I was showing in class, okay? You can have absolute transformations, relative transformations to where something is and where you want it to be, rename, and select by name. We're only interested in rename right now, so I'll click that. And if I had multiple things selected, I'd be able to name them. So usually I would call this like left upper arm or left shoulder or something like that, then left clavicle, left elbow, you know what I mean? There's a different naming convention that we're not going to go over right now, but you can name them something that makes sense, okay? Or if you wanted to be quick with it, I could select this, and those two together would be right arm. An example of that could be like a capital R, and then an underscore ARM, okay? Or you could just forego the underscore and just put right arm ARM. And we talked about camel casing in class one day. I don't know if you remember, but camel casing is just an abbreviation or a first word. This is abbreviation, so I put capital R. You could put a lowercase r, but usually like a first word would be like right. It would be lowercase, all lowercase, and any word after that is going to start with uppercase. So if I did right arm block character, that's what that would look like. And that's very unnecessary, because if you had to code something, to type that in would be atrocious. So you could do something as easy as R, arm, okay? I'll usually spell it out in class just to make it easier for students to learn and stuff, or, you know, however you feel like you're going to be comfortable, then that's the way you're going to work, okay? So if I did that and hit enter, like R arm, it labels these for me. So now when I select this one, there's right arm 1 and right arm 2, okay? That's very helpful for the finger joints. And what I would show for the finger joints, and this is the last thing that I can do right now for this tutorial, is that if I selected this joint, I don't have to shift click on all these if I don't want to. I can, but that's not necessary. So if I go up here, I go to select, and I go down to hierarchy. what it's done is it's selected all of these joints for me, like if I shift clicked on each one of them. Okay, anytime you see a name of something and then a dot dot dot, that means that it's done it. So if I go over here, and this isn't the right arm, this is the left arm, so I'd have to go rename that right arm. If I hit L for left, or just type in left, and I put index, I know it's the index finger. So I can hit enter, and it's going to label all of them. Okay, so they're all there, and then the next step would be just testing it. I could click on each one of them, and you'll see all the different names up here and over here. Left index 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. The arm, I'll select this one, and I'm selecting them in order in this case. Select this one, shift select this one, and I'll tell it to be left arm. Okay, and that's perfect right there. So if I label this one, oh, it's part of left arm as well. That's good. Oh, I could just type it out, right? So they all have the same name. They all have to have the exact same thing. Like left is spelled out that way. So if you stick with just a lowercase L or an uppercase L, then you want to label all of them an uppercase L, then whatever they are. So I can select this basically, and well, let's delete this one. Watch. I'll hit delete. If I was going to mirror this, now I can use that functionality real quick. So skeleton, mirror joints, option box. Why is these good? We're going to copy the functionality being the behavior. I'm going to search for left, and you have to spell it the way that you'd spelled it. It was all lowercase, so left, and I'm going to replace with right. And I'm going to go ahead and go down to mirror. Apply will mirror it and keep the dialog box, or sorry, this option box open in case you want to undo and change something in here and then run this process again. Mirror is going to run this process and then close the box. That's the only difference between the two. If you decide, hey, I don't want to do this, I'll just hit close. So I'm just going to mirror it because I know it's going to mirror, and then I don't need the box, the dialog box, sorry, the option box open. And you're going to see that everything on the right arm now is called right arm. So it changed it from, it searched for anything that said left, and it changed it with right. Okay, and all of these are going to be the same. So that's pretty good. I hope this helps out. Let me know. I'm not sure what happened with this. That is, yeah, that's okay. Anyhow, let me know if this helps, if you have any questions, and I will post this soon. Take care. Bye, guys.